Hey guys, welcome back to the Nutrition Blueprint podcast. This is your host Andres Ayesta and your co-host.
I'm Mackenzie Green. I'm glad to be back. Here we are.
Welcome back. Yes, we took a step back to see how we can kind of revamp our podcast content and we bring you more great, valuable information that you can implement for yourself. More guest speakers. We're going to bring back Tony and Desi to do our chit chat series that we have been doing. We have some really exciting, awesome stuff coming up in terms of episodes. So looking forward to that. And then I guess we'll just kind of give you guys an update. It was what kind of been going on in Planos and basically, which is our coaching platform. And this is the first time you're listening in. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about who I am. I'm going to try to do that every time that we have a new season in case obviously you're just a newbie here and this is the first time you're here. My name is Andres Ayesta. I'm a registered dietitian. You probably heard me on the introduction. I am the CEO and founder of Planos Nutrition, which is a company dedicated to helping mostly women and some men improve or build a blueprint for themselves when it comes down to nutrition and lifestyle. Like really helping them lose the weight as a consequence of changing a lot of different things in their life, not the other way around, which is a lot of times people following a diet and hoping that their life changes as a result of that, which is a lot of times the wrong way to do things. So we're trying to really break through the chronic dieting cycle that, diet culture continues to tell you that you need to be a part of and really helping people lose 15 to 30 pounds in 6 months in a way that is different and sustainable and that you can kind of maintain forever. My podcast sidekick is Mackenzie Green. You want to introduce yourself a little bit more so people know a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. I am the content manager at Planos, and I'm also, as you said, the podcast sidekick. I am a nutrition student right now. I'm planning to become a registered dietitian in the future, and so I'm in school right now, and I'm from Canada. So we often talk in the podcast about the crazy weather in Canada. So if you hear a reference to that is because I live in Toronto.
Yep. And I am located in Temple, Florida, which I guess we can call Planos HQ, which is literally my house. But very excited to have you guys back up in here in the podcast. And just really quick rules of engagements that I like to always kind of share. We are very approachable. So whenever you have a question or there's a comment that you had in terms of the podcast, make sure you come to us. We are very active on social media. Mackenzie here now, it's like super active on TikTok. He's just crushing the TikTok game right now. So you're definitely going to check us out in some of our other social media channels, including Instagram. We also have a blog, which is in planosnutrition.com. We have a Facebook community that is amazing. So we try to be omnipresent everywhere so you get the most out of, what we offer, including a lot of the free resources that we have available that, for example, you can check out some of them already in the show notes as well. We want to make sure like a lot of those links are updated so you can download a lot of the freebie stuff that we have for you guys that you can implement in your weight loss or health and fitness journey. And just to remind you guys that a lot of the information we share on here is evidence-based. So we try to obviously use science and, science-based nutrition education just to make sure you know that we're not just kind of coming up with some random stuff. But some of the stuff we talked about is also mindset specific and it's related based on our client success stories. And some of the things that we've done in the past anecdotally that has been working out well for them. So I think that's all for the introduction here for today. And then without further ado, let's get into today's episode of the Nutrition Blueprint podcast, where we're going to be talking a little bit more about losing your first 10 pounds and losing your last 10 and how that is actually going to be very, very different. And why a lot of times the first 10 may be very hard, but very easy. And then the last 10, a lot of times is going to be the hardest that you could be losing.
Yeah, and I think that's a great episode for the new season because a lot of people come to this podcast looking to lose weight, and we'll definitely be covering those beginning stages today. But also once you're partway into it, I know a lot of people struggle and stall at the end of their weight loss journey, and I think that a lot of people struggle with this and get it wrong for different reasons. Like there's and we'll get into some of those reasons today, why the start and the end are very difficult. So maybe we'll start at the beginning of the journey. If someone's just joining in, they've realized that they want to lose some weight. Maybe we can talk about what does their lifestyle usually look like at the beginning and what makes it hard to lose the first 10?
Yes. So the one of the things that I talked about this week on the Facebook community, which we covered this topic in depth, is like a a lot of times like people start at different places when it comes down to their weight loss journey. And usually depending on where you're at, there's a lifestyle usually in general looks a little bit different from different people. So we're going to use an example of somebody that needs to lose anywhere between 30 to 50 pounds. Okay. That is a person that a lot of the times when, and again, this is a lot of things that we're going to talk about is not necessarily saying that, it's stereotypical. Everybody is like this, because there's many people that have a different lifestyle and they do struggle with losing the 30 to 50 pounds. But in general terms, most people that need to lose a lot of the weight have very similar lifestyles, right? So we can kind of start to categorize a lot of the things that a lot of times they're not doing and what they can start to do to make that transition to start losing some of that weight, right? So the lifestyle of somebody that has a lot of weight to lose usually looks something like this. These are people that a lot of times will have, maybe they're eating out a lot, right? These are people that find more convenience in getting meals from other places, restaurants, and different things like that. Second of all, these are people also that do not cook at home very often. A lot of times the lifestyle of these individuals, when I talk, after talking to dozens and hundreds of men and women, usually they end up gaining weight, mostly because a lot of times it's related to either they became parents or they became moms or dads, or a lot of times their jobs got the best out of them and they stopped focusing on many different things. So they get very busy. So usually the lifestyle is people, they're not prioritizing their nutrition. They're not making that a priority. Maybe they used to do it and not anymore. And that's maybe racked up some weights. And some of the people that always had some weight issues usually is they've never created a lifestyle that prioritizes nutrition, from that perspective. On the other hand, a lot of times that people that have a lot of weight to lose, they've done a lot of diets. They've done a lot of repetitive things that were very drastic, that were very aggressive. And just case in point, last night I had a conversation with somebody that lost 30 pounds within 3 months. Right? That's like literally 10 pounds a month, which is pretty aggressive. But at the same time, she gained the same weight back up very rapidly as well, because what she did was very aggressive. So there's like different categories of where people are at whenever they need to lose anywhere between 30 to 50 pounds. And usually the way to do it, or the way to start, it's a lot of times not what many people think, which is doing something aggressively. Aggressiveness and extremist programs and things like that can definitely help you lose weight a lot faster. But the problem that we tend to see, it's very hard to maintain that long term. But the person that needs to lose about 30 to 40 to 50 pounds, their first 10 pounds usually can start by making smaller changes, which we're going to get into. That was the first question, right? Is there anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we can just start by kind of giving an overall sort of a disclaimer for this episode, is that genetics are going to play a big role in and other factors in your life, and whether it's going to be easy or difficult to lose that first 10 pounds or the last 10 pounds or wherever you are at. But if your lifestyle does look like right now, like the lifestyle that you just described, eating out a lot, not having routines to prioritize your nutrition, then some of the suggestions that we're going to make in this episode, they probably apply to you, and you can start making some tweaks based on what we discuss here.
Yeah.
So you have these people, they don't really have a set lifestyle. What is the first thing that they should do to start making the changes to start losing that first 10 pounds?
The first step is understanding what their baseline is. So when you're trying to lose a lot of weight, you need to figure out exactly why haven't you yet. And a lot of times that we need to start to figure out, again, points aside, like genetics and health issues and health concerns and different things like that. But we typically need to start to understand, okay, what is it that you're doing right now? What are your lifestyle looking like? So I like to kind of use that as a sort of like an audit process. In an audit process, really what we're trying to do is trying to understand, okay, what does your day look like right now? Let's try to understand, what do you do in the morning when you're waking up? And, do you have breakfast at home, or you're the person that typically goes and eats and stops by a drive-through and gets something to eat? Are you the person that usually brings a lunch to work, or you're a person that typically goes and have lunch with coworkers and you don't really pay too much attention attention to what you're ordering, only what sounds good? Are you the person that skips meals, that maybe snacks on things? Maybe the person that a lot of times are like munching and grabbing little snacks that they're bringing into the office if you work in an office setting? Are you also a person that is like inconsistently working out or exercising? Are you a person that is also spending a ton of time sitting down and not doing much? Right? So that would help you determine what your baseline is. This is essentially what your life looks like right now. And this life that's either created weight gain in the past or in the currently, or is keeping you where you're at, which is extremely frustrating. So the first step is understanding where you're at right now. Once you have the list of things and you understand, okay, this is exactly what I'm doing right now, you can start to pick things out of that list to start to change. And then you start with one thing at a time. The easiest transition that anybody can make to start losing their first 10 pounds and starting to pick 1, 2, 3 things that is easy for them to do. Example and point in case. Let's say a person is somebody that wakes up in the morning, sprints out of the door, and they go and grab something from Starbucks or something from Dunkin' Donuts or, McDonald's or whatever is the case. They're just like the drive-through person in the morning. Right. So a simple change that you can start to make is, let's pick maybe 3 to 5 different breakfast options that are quick and quickly made under 10 minutes that maybe fits like all the components of a healthy breakfast, maybe fruit, some whole grains, maybe some protein, and start focusing on having a healthy breakfast every morning. And maybe that is the first thing you start to do. Why is that important? Because that sets the day up for better adjustments and changes. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the first step that you need to take. This is essentially an example. The second step is simply going to be, or maybe you're picking something else out of that list and you're saying, you know what, I'm just going to be more conscious of the food choices that I'm making when I'm going to go eat with my coworkers for lunch. And instead of ordering the burger with the fries, I'm going to try to order maybe, a salad with, or maybe something like a leaner type of burger with a side salad on, or something along those lines. And I'm going to try to order water instead of the soda type of thing. So that is like smaller incremental changes that can make a difference. Maybe you're picking the movement and exercise part of it. Then you're just simply choosing to say, you know what, when I get off of work, I'm going to come home, I'm going to put on my workout clothes, and I'm just simply going to go on like a 15 to 20 minute walk, right? Many people underestimate the impact that smaller changes can create in their lives. And they think of this is not enough. And this is not enough for me to be able to see changes. And then usually that's what leads them to fall in for a lot of these like very aggressive programs in which they're doing this laundry list of things that usually are not sustainable. So what we want to start to do is we need to start to focus on those like 2 to 3 things at a time and repeat that. Can you repeat that consistently at least 3-4 days a week, right? Can you start to move that out to 5 to 6 to 7? Then you move on to something new, and slowly you start to change the baseline that you had. And then you start to create a new lifestyle that is more conducive to starting to lose some of that weight that you have. And before you know it, you're eating less throughout the day. So you're creating the deficit of calories required for fat loss and weight loss. And then before you know it again, you start to see, oh, wow, I'm starting to lose the weight. So it's more about the smaller changes and lifestyle factors that a lot of times are helpful. So just to recap, audit where you're at right now and see what your baseline is looking like. Because what I share, of course, that's just more in general terms. Perhaps you're a person that does eat breakfast every morning, and what you need to change is the composition of that breakfast. Perhaps you're a person that brings your lunch every day, but perhaps what needs to change is you need to maybe switch from those like frozen Marie Callender's meals that maybe have like way too much fat, and then you need to change them into something a little bit more balanced. Everybody's different, but you need to understand what you are currently doing right now that is not serving you, it's not helping you, to see what is it that you need to start to change.
Yeah, and I think look for the things that are creating the biggest problem. Like, what are the big drivers of the problem you're currently having? So for example, say you have a significant emotional eating problem, or you say weekends you go out and you're drinking a lot of alcohol every weekend, you're overeating on the weekends. That is probably the biggest problem to address before you get into the little nitty gritty, like composition of my breakfast each day, or when you get down to the finer details. And I think there's this problem where you say, oh, I'm going to solve all these little details, but don't solve the things that's actually the biggest driver of the problem. It's like having a bucket and there's a tiny hole on one side and a giant hole in the bottom. And you're really not going to be able to fill up that bucket if you don't solve patch up the big hole first.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, so a lot of times the baseline starts with changing what you do on the weekends, right? So like many people a lot of times don't understand like the impact that a lot of times kind of creates when it comes down to what they're doing on the weekend. And like they're really great. This happens to a lot of the people that we talk to and that we help, which is, you know, they have like a great Monday, a great Tuesday, but then really what great means is like they're very restricted, right? So they're in kind of like dieting mode. And then like Friday, Saturday, Sunday comes and they're rewarding themselves for being so good throughout the week. And then they usually break the consistency that is required to be able to kind of see changes overall. So they lose some of the weight and then they kind of gain it back up because there's a lot of water and a lot of like, you know, sodium intake and some of the different things like that. So maybe perhaps like the biggest change that you can start to make, it's trying to fix the consistency you create on the weekend and try to create instead of that then restriction through the week and then like complete lack of control throughout the weekend. Maybe start to focus on making goal supportive decisions in your weekends. And you're going to start to notice wherever like, you know, that actually starts to create more momentum in terms of the goals that you're trying to achieve and trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And then going hand in hand with making some better decisions on the weekend is also making sure you're not restricting during the week. Like if you're someone who wants to try like tracking your food, I mean, that can be really part of the auditing process for many people. And if you realize that you're under eating 5 days a week, that's just increasing your calories is going to make a huge difference in terms of your consistency over time and your ability to maintain that calorie deficit.
100%.
Great. So I think, and one thing I also want to say that you said in the live this week on our Facebook community that I really liked is a lot of people start their fat loss journey doing the things that would be required to lose the last 10 pounds when they're over here on the first 10 pounds. And I think that was a great point. Is it's not really about the details at the beginning.
Yeah. So you want to transition into the opposite, which is
I think that's a good spot to go now. So when someone is preparing to, or like they've already lost a significant amount of weight, or maybe no, it's not even, you know, they've lost a little bit of weight at the beginning and they're at a place where they want to get a little bit leaner. They're like, oh, you know, things are going pretty well, but they still have a bit of a weight loss goal left. They have some goal weight, although we can talk about how maybe, you know, that might create some problems. What does their lifestyle usually look like at that last 10 pounds point?
So there's like two types of people when they only have like about 10 pounds to lose. There's the ones that have lost a ton of weight and they're just very frustrated because they feel like they plateaued and they still have like maybe 10 to 15 pounds more to lose and they cannot figure out exactly why they can't. And there's going to be the people that are already lean or they have a fairly lower percentage of body fat or they don't really have a whole lot of weight to lose. And they're just simply trying to get rid of like 10 to 15 pounds. So example, I was that person about when I turned 30, I was about 10 to 15 pounds overweight. I could tell my clothes fit, like my pants were not fitting correctly. So I was the type of person that I was not necessarily a person that went on like this very long weight loss journey. I was just a person that needed to lose 10 to 15 pounds, right? So there's like two different types of individuals. The first one, which is the person that's lost a lot of weight, it depends on how they did it, right? So if you're a person, for example, that lost like 30 to 40 pounds in a very short period of time, you probably did it by creating intense restriction, very intense calorie restricted diets that created an environment in which was, you know, again, very restricted, that created rapid weight loss. What happens whenever we sprint is we get tired, right? Whenever we sprint for too long, eventually we cannot really continue because it's really hard to sustain. So two things happen. Either one, you're a person that you cannot sustain being in very low calorie states for too long. When you look at things like this competition called The Biggest Loser, these guys are doing 800 to 1,000 calories a day. You cannot sustain that for too long of a period of time. And these people are like losing 200 pounds within 4 months, right? Or 5 months, 6 months. So it's hard to sustain that lifestyle because your body cannot thrive on that very low amount of calories. So what happens at this point is you either start to eat a lot more because it's really hard to sustain that, or simply you're eating very little. And then there's something known as adaptive thermogenesis, where your body starts to move less, like you don't have very much energy, so you don't really kind of feel as active to be able to work out as much. So you start to burn less calories because your body's trying to preserve and it's trying to kind of keep you alive. So in those cases, you kind of create a lot of those plateaus. Now, people think about that your metabolism slows down. I don't like to kind of say that your metabolism slows down, but what really happens is your body's trying to do everything in its power to try to really preserve your ability to survive, right? Because your body doesn't like to lose weight, likes to kind of stay balanced. So that's one case scenario in which it happens. But many people think that that's what's happening, when in reality is they're just munching and eating certain things that just go on completely unnoticed. And that's what a lot of times it creates some of that plateauing, because you're not creating the right environment for fat loss to continue. At the same time, those people sometimes fail to understand that you need to make adjustments throughout that process of weight loss. Your body at 30 to 40 pounds less is completely different than what it used to be when you were 30 to 40 pounds plus, right? So there's a lot of different changes and adjustments you need to be making around this stuff. It also depends on your body composition. But in general, most people that lost a ton of weight, it depends on how they did it, right? So when you have 10 pounds to lose in this specific cohort of people or the specific population that lost some weight, a lot of times you need to start to, again, going back to what I just mentioned earlier with the person that needs to start to lose weight, which is, what is the current baseline? What are you currently doing right now, right? Because the lifestyle for that person could look completely different. You could be the person that it's normally eating, following the diet very loosely because it's been 4 months and you're so sick and tired of eating exactly the same things over and over again. And you realize that, you know what, I've been eating a lot more in restaurants. I've been munching a lot of this little piece of thing. My weekends are a lot of times are not as consistent because I'm not as motivated. So some of those changes and some of those little things you need to start to pay attention to. That's in one case, whenever the weight loss happened in a very, very aggressive manner. The second type of person is the person that just, did it correctly, or they just simply have little weight to lose, in which the lifestyle for that person is going to look a little bit different, because losing the last 10 pounds requires a little bit more level of detail. So we talked about when you start in your weight loss journey, you need to start to make lifestyle changes and adjustments. If you did this correctly, you likely did it by changing, your lifestyle. You start to focus a lot more on more the balance of your meals. You're exercising more consistently. So to losing the 10 pounds requires more attention to detail, right? So it requires a lot more different things that you need to be more aware of and you need to be paying more attention to. I'm going to give you an example. So when you're starting the process, maybe you're not tracking your macros or calories, or you don't really necessarily macromanage none of those different things. When you have 10 pounds to lose, maybe you need to start to pay attention a little bit more closely to how many calories you're actually consuming. Are you getting enough protein? Are you actually kind of getting a really good balance between carbohydrates and fats? Does it mean that just you need to start to track all those things when you need to lose the last 10 pounds? Not necessarily, but a lot of times it creates a lot more awareness in terms of, okay, this is why it's either I'm plateauing and not moving forward, or because I only have 10 pounds to lose, which was my case, for example, when I was losing a lot, or when I was really trying to get rid of that 10 to 15 pounds. I mean, imagine I'm a dietitian. I know the basics of nutrition. I have a fairly decent lifestyle. I'm working out consistently, but yet here I am 15 pounds overweight, and I really cannot understand exactly what is it that I'm doing wrong. And it's not until I started to focus on the details, okay, let me see what is it that I'm doing every day. Oh my God, look at this, look at that, look at what's happening on my weekends. I'm actually drinking a lot more alcohol. So you start to focus on the details and pay attention to just more the smaller things that really make a difference. So the biggest mistake many people make is they start to focus on those things when they're starting off, when they have 50 to 60 to 20 or 80 pounds to lose. And a lot of times that's just more advanced strategies to be able to kind of help you get rid of the weight. So there's different stages that you need to start to really pay attention to. But in general, the lifestyle of the person that needs to lose a lot less weight, it's a little bit different. Of course, there's variations. The person that has great genetics, right? And they just have exactly the same lifestyle that the person that is 50 pounds overweight. So this is obviously what we're saying, that this doesn't apply for everybody. There is that type of person that will have only 10 pounds, above, because they have either great genetics or they have all different things like that. And they like eat like crap, and they drink alcohol and do all different things. We know people like that, right? So in general, a lot of times for those people to lose those 10 pounds, they just need to make that smaller adjustment, and then it's kind of unfair, but then and then the weight kind of comes off, right? But for many others, they're really doing a lot of things, and they get very frustrated because they're working out, they're doing resistance training, they're checking supposedly all the boxes, yet they're not seeing those like 10 pounds, 15 pounds actually come off, and they don't really see the changes. And usually it's, the devil is in the details. And a lot of times that's really where you're going to find most of the changes that you need to be making, so you can lose that last bit of weight that you need to be losing.
Yeah. And I also think it's important to have a conversation with yourself about why you want to lose that last 10 to 15 pounds. Like, what changes are you willing to make? Is it, what really are your goals? So can you talk about that? Like, for you, what was your motivation, and what do you see in other people? Like, is it worth it for them to lose that last little bit of weight?
Yeah, that's a very, one of the most important questions you can ever ask yourself as you're starting a new goal or objective or trying to work towards something. It's like, why are you doing it? Like, what's the reason behind wanting to do certain things, right? Like, do you want to do it simply because you're just trying to lose the weight to look good in like the summer, right? And then usually I will ask the question like, okay, but why is that important to you? Right. So first off, it's understanding really what's like the driving force behind the decisions that you're making and why you want to accomplish that goal. And I really try to peel the layers with the people that we're working with, because that ends up being the force that really gets them up in the morning to do something different about their life, because they're trying to, it's the things that you're trying to run away from, right? The kind of things that you don't want to go back to. You're tired of feeling like you cannot fit in your clothes. You're tired of feeling like you don't like to show up on pictures. Like, I've had conversations lately to people that tell me that they don't even like to go to social events because they're just afraid of what people like think of them, or people make assumptions of them, or, it's things like that, right? So the driving force behind that, it's understanding, okay, you know what? Like, I want this because I don't want to go back to the previous life that I had, because I'm ready for a change. So when that's like the driving force, then obviously you can start to create the lifestyle that you want to build at this point, right? So the drive or the why typically drives the how, which is one of like the most important realizations that anybody can have. Whenever the why is not strong enough, usually it's very difficult to kind of follow through in that process. So once you kind of determine why you want to do this, and then why is it important to you, then we can kind of start to figure out exactly what is it that you're willing to do, and what are some of the things that you're not willing to do. This is when we start to look into what is your life like, right? So if you're a mom and you got kids, do you think you're going to be spending 2 hours in the gym every day, and you're going to be like, meal prepping for like 5 hours on the weekends, and doing this extra hours of cardio and stuff like that? Perhaps like you think about that and you're like, there's no way I can be doing that. So if you have like 10 to 15 pounds to lose, maybe, I'm not saying that that's what's required, but you're going to have to do a lot more work than what you're doing right now. But the question is, are you willing to do that? Because here's what the biggest, like the biggest thing, or the biggest problem that I see many people. Some people want to accomplish something, but they're not really willing to work at the level that something can be accomplished, right? So, I want to lose the 10 pounds, but this is what really is required, because this is exactly what is not being done right now. Oh no, but I'm not really willing to do that. That's just a little bit too hard for me because I don't have the time. Okay, then you need to change the expectation. And you need to say to yourself, you know what, maybe I'm not ready to lose the 10 pounds because I'm not willing to give up certain things in my life that either make me happy, or that I'm not willing to sacrifice time with my family, with my friends, and like the social side of things. My weekends is the kind of stuff that I always look forward to. Then you have to manage your expectations differently, which is really what happens to many people when it comes down to weight loss. In business, for example, people want to like make quick money, but they're not willing to do all the work that is required to be able to get to that point, right? So that is the biggest well, not misconception. It's just like, a poor management of expectations, which I think it's important. So to people listening right now, what the best thing that you can do at this point is figuring out exactly what do you want? Why do you want it? And are those realistic expectations based on the life that you have right now and the life that you want to live, right? At the same time, expectations can change, and you can realize, you know what, I'm not willing to give any of this stuff up. I had a conversation once with somebody who told me, like, I want to make sure I have my gin and tonic every single night. I don't want to give that up. It's like, okay, but then you do realize that obviously alcohol can sometimes affect it. Maybe one drink a night is not necessarily going to make a big difference, but it's definitely something that we have to consider. Okay, that's fine. So you're going to have to move a lot slower, right? Okay. And then this person can start to get very frustrated because they're not seeing the changes fast enough. And I said, well, we need to manage your expectations. These are the list of things that you're not willing to change. That may be the main reasons why you're moving a lot slower than what you think, right? So are you ready to make those changes? And a lot of times people would say, you know what? Yes, because they realize a lot of the changes that they don't want to make, they're just simply very ingrained habits that they have that they just don't know how to break. And once you learn how to break them, and once you understand, you know what, I actually did not need the gin and tonic every single night. I just realized I've just been doing it for so long that it's something that I just did naturally. And I thought that I needed that in my life, and I didn't. Bingo. Then we know that all you need to do is change your habits. It's not about changing your life. It's changing the things that are kind of keeping you in the same place that you think are requirements. Now, that's a little bit different than saying, I want to play with my kids every single night instead of kind of going to the gym, right? Okay. Like, that's important in your life. And I can see why that is important. So I'm not willing to go to the gym. Okay. Like, what happens in the morning? Can you make the sacrifice to do that? No, I don't want to do that. Okay. Then you're going to be moving at a slower speed. I'm just not a morning person, right? So that's a lot of times like the limiting beliefs that many people have, which is like, oh, I'm this person. I'm not this person. I'm not this person. That is a belief that's not a fact. It's just more about belief that you have. It's a fact that you create in your head that is not quite that, right? So a lot of times, like, this is where we typically struggle a lot with managing false expectations in terms of what we want to accomplish and what we're willing and not willing to do.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people find is there's a new normal that's created when you change your habits, and you look back on it and you say, I can't believe I used to think like that. I can't believe this was my normal back then. And right in that moment, you thought you'd never be able to change it, but eventually it just does change. Like when I was in, I think in second year of my first degree, I used to use coffee whitener a lot, and I love my coffee with coffee whitener. I thought this is the best.
Coffee whitener would be coffee creamer, right? I think you guys call it.
Oh yeah.
I was like whitener. Like, I feel like, like whitener, we call it like teeth whitening.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that was a Canadian thing.
Coffee creamer.
Okay, yeah. Coffee creamer. And I thought I would never be able to leave my coffee creamer behind. And then a few years later, I was like, why was I ever using all this coffee creamer? Like, I don't need that. I love my coffee with just like a little bit of milk in it now. And so I don't know, it's just kind of funny how as you slowly change your habits, you get to this new normal and you look back on it and you're like, I can't believe I used to do that. And so sort of like be open to the possibility that could happen for you, rather than saying, oh, I could never give up my drinks on the weekend. Say, what if I did give up my drinks on the weekend? And you might get up to the point where it's totally normal for you not to go out drinking every weekend.
People feel that they're bound to bad habits that are part of who they are, when in reality, that's what they are. They're just bad habits. Yeah. In other words, people really think that there's parts of their life that they don't ever want to change because it's part of their quote unquote personality, when in reality, they're just simply bad habits that, again, they don't know how to break. When you start to understand that a habit has a process, an anatomy, and it has triggers, routines, and rewards around that process, you learn to know that it's something that is not ingrained, that is not you. It's just simply something that you've repeatedly done for years. So when you start to replace that with good ones, those good habits can turn into a new way of living that can support your goals in the future.
Yeah.
That's that is the biggest learning lesson I've ever gotten from my personal life when I look back into the things that I was doing that was not supportive. Like, I haven't really told this and I haven't really kind of shared this in a podcast or ever in my life, but I used to smoke cigarettes. I don't think I've ever kind of shared that in my life. I grew up in a Latino culture where like smoking cigarettes was a very common thing. Right. And in the time that I was doing it, I felt like that was something like, no, this is like part of me. My dad smoked his entire life. Right. So this is just maybe me. And I'm always going to be doing this. I just always need to have a couple of cigarettes a day. Right. And it's not until I realized that that's just I don't have to follow my dad's faith. I don't have to follow the same thing that he did. I can do my own things and I can choose to do things differently. I just needed to break that habit to be able to turn it into something better. The same thing with working out and exercise. The same thing with eating healthy, with eating better, with choosing things in restaurants. You think in your mind that you cannot do that because it's not you. It's not part of who you are or your personality, when in reality, it's just those habits that you just never really tried to break. Or maybe you have, but you haven't done it long enough for that to become something that you get rid of and replace with something else.
Yeah, and that's another good point, is just because you haven't done it yet, just because you haven't broken that habit yet, does not mean you are never going to do that. I think a lot of people take what they have been able to do in the past as evidence of what are going to be able to do in the future. And that's just not true. That's just a limiting belief that a lot of people have.
Correct.
All right. Well, I think that might be a good place for us to finish off for today.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I said, for people listening to this is, if you want to get something as a big takeaway, is we talked about this all the time. You cannot make a change until you figure out exactly what needs to change. Right. Like, in many people, or many, like, this is the weight loss industry is preying on the fact that they're going to try to plug something into your life instead of trying for you to do the opposite. Like, how is my life actually being able to fit this thing? Right. And what the biggest mistake that everybody makes is like, okay, they try to like make this like drastic change that usually cannot be, maintained over time. Right. So rather than looking back, like turning the camera around and looking at yourself and seeing, okay, what am I doing? Like, what is really like my life like right now? And then at the same time, I ask a very important question to everybody, which is, who is a 2.0 version of yourself? Like, who are you trying to become? When you think of yourself like 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the line, if you think about the dream version of you, who is that person? And people will kind of go in all kinds of different routes. And they tell me like, I'm a person that finished, his or her degree. I'm a person that is a good mom. I have 3 kids. I'm married happily in this place. I am very comfortable in my body. I'm making decisions around food without feeling guilty about it. And they kind of give me this like long list of things that they're literally want to become. And I said, so what's stopping you from becoming that person? And usually they don't even know how to answer that, because a lot of times they're not really understanding what's going on in their life that is keeping them from really pursuing that. So turn the lens around, look at yourself in the mirror, look at yourself in a way that not as a judgmental, way, but just more about like, okay, this is who I am right now. And these are the kind of things, this is who I want to become. And this is what I'm willing to do to try to get to that destination. And once you make that decision, everything else becomes easier. And that's usually where like most people fail, because they think they want something. And here's like some really quick thing that you can do to be able to get there, but you're not really doing all the work that is required to be able to make that happen.
Yeah. And that's a fantastic exercise to do. Even like writing a current you and a future you. And I've done it a few times, and I frequently look back on the future me and see, is it the way I'm acting each day? Is it in alignment with this? And it's a great way to guide your actions. If you are saying like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this, and this is what my to-do list looks like for the day, but that is not in alignment with the future you, then it might be time for a priority shift.
Yeah, it is. So with that, we close up today's episode, but hopefully you get something valuable out of this. The biggest thing that you got to understand is like, you are capable of accomplishing many things. Of course, we're going to reiterate in this conversation that there was a lot of things that we said today that are just more in general terms. Everybody's different. Everybody's have complete different lifestyles, and they're going through different things in their lives, including health conditions and other types of things that are part of it. There's a lot of mindset work that is connected to sustainable weight loss that many people struggle with. So yeah, take this obviously with a grain of salt, of course, because again, this is in general terms, and like I said, everybody is completely different. But that's why we have a coaching program where we are trying to understand you, and we're trying to create something that is, tailored to your needs. That is, a lot of times, like, it's easier. Many people can do this on their own, but a lot of times many people can't. And they spend their entire life looking for answers and looking for quick fixes and different things like that, and trying to DIY it, right? They're trying to do it themselves. And they keep failing, but then a lot of times it's hard to accept the fact that you have been failing, and you keep telling yourself that every single diet that you've done, it's worked, right? And you just simply gain the weight back because you stopped doing it. Then I'm going to give you a really big news flash on here, which is none of those diets worked, because you wouldn't really be looking for support or help or being frustrated at this point if those things did, regardless of the changes that you have in your life. So that is more of the eye-opening type of, statement that I want to make sure I leave you with. But you're not alone in this. And then there's like plenty of ways for support, from whether it's like, we are helping you or somebody else is helping you. But the key thing you got to remember is you have to start to do a lot of this inner work before you be able to get to your destination. Otherwise, things are really hard to be able to maintain overall. So with that, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Nutrition Blueprint Podcast. If you loved this, if you enjoyed it, take a screenshot, share it on your social media. Just simply say, hey, this podcast was amazing. Thank you so much, you guys, for sharing this. It really resonated with me. Or you can totally say this sucked. You can totally do whatever we want. We're super open to that. And again, make sure you check the show notes for any important links that we share, or any important information that we share throughout the podcast, or any of our social media channels. So you can check us out, and you can continue to be connected to us in Planos, our Planos family, our Planos community, and also to everything else that we do. So again, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode to Nutrition Blueprint Podcast. Welcome back to the season, and we'll see you guys back on the next week.